You think you found the absolute test winner for your dog, but in reality you might just be buying a simple clone. Many digital providers do not develop their own tariffs, but merely slap a new logo onto an existing product. Whether you sign with Petprotect or Dog Protect 24, often the exact same underwriter is hiding in the background, so do not let a colorful brand presence blind you. Always look closely at the fine print, because the true winner of these tests is often Barmenia, whose tariff structure is simply licensed multiple times over. Because earning a top rating will bring massive new business, distributors just copy the tariff that best meets the criteria. This leaves out over 100 remaining tariffs, so only a fraction truly perform well, and those share the exact same core. If you cancel in frustration and switch providers, you might end up with the exact same insurance structure. But the biggest misunderstanding is the so-called full coverage. This tricks owners into prepaying for predictable things like vaccinations and worming treatments, while paying horrendous monthly fees for the illusion of safety. You are essentially handing over cash so the insurer can add their own administrative margin on top of those routine veterinary visits. The provider profits off your need for peace of mind, meaning this all-inclusive package is a clear mathematical loss for most owners. The smart alternative that actually protects you from financial ruin is pure surgery coverage. Here, you pay for minor issues yourself, but you have massive financial backing when your dog actually has to go on the operating table. Compared to full coverage, you often save 40 to 60% on your premiums, leaving you with much more liquidity to handle small vet visits out of pocket. Never insure routine, predictable expenses. Only, exclusively insure the true financial catastrophe that could wipe you out. Yet even with the best tariff, you are not safe from sudden price shocks over time. Because of the drastically increased veterinary fee schedule, providers are now passing those massive systemic costs onto their customers with a time delay. Early this year, existing customers of Hans & Merker received massive premium hikes in their mailboxes. Your entry price is therefore just a lure, as the premium will rise massively over a dog's lifetime. Things get genuinely expensive when your dog needs help on the weekend or in the middle of the night. During an emergency service, veterinary clinics are completely legally allowed to charge 4 times the standard fee for their work. If your tariff is capped at reimbursing only 3 times the rate, you are left sitting on the extremely expensive difference. The clinic will demand payment, and your insurance simply will not cover it. Always strictly check whether your emergency limit covers the worst-case scenario. Their most perfidious trick is searching your files for old, minor symptoms. If you forget to mention a slight limp when applying, this is considered a breach of your pre-contractual duty of disclosure. Even if there was no real diagnosis back then, the provider will simply refuse reimbursement for a major surgery years later. Every tiny old vet note can break your neck in an emergency. But how do they uncover these tiny details in the very first place? The truth is quite simple, because only when you submit an expensive receipt do they secretly request the complete medical record from your vet. Fortunately, courts are starting to put a legal stop to this systematic search for vague old symptoms, like the recent ruling in Helmstedt. So you should now play with completely open cards when applying to take this weapon directly out of their hands. But the worst moment really is not a rejection, but when the insurance company simply kicks you out entirely. Under German insurance law, the provider is allowed to cancel the contract after any covered medical event, which means your dog develops a chronic illness. The first surgery is paid, and the next day you are completely uninsurable. This means your protection is extremely fragile when it really counts, leaving your chronically ill pet without a safety net. This is exactly why top tariffs loudly advertise their so-called waiver of cancellation. What they hide from you is that this heavily marketed protection often does not take effect immediately, but is tied to nasty deadlines. There is often a hidden window of up to 36 months where they can still throw you out anyway. Never blindly trust the word waiver without checking the exact activation year, because there is also a hidden 36-month window of vulnerability, plus a general waiting period, although it usually lasts 1 to 3 months for illnesses. If your dog gets sick exactly during this critical initial phase, you are left completely alone with the costs. The only exception is a sudden physical accident, as this immediate protection applies from day one in good tariffs. It gets even more extreme if you have a dog breed with known genetic weaknesses. Insurers often impose a special waiting period of up to 24 months for joint problems. Especially during the rapid growth phases of young dogs, you have a gigantic financial gap in your contract here. You absolutely must check the fine print, specifically for the typical clinical pictures of your own breed. But even if your situation is clearly covered, you currently face a massive organizational issue. A combination of staff shortages and rapidly rising vet costs has caused the processing departments of many insurers to collapse entirely. This backlog is reflected in a true explosion of official complaints to the financial regulator BaFin this year, so be prepared to bring an enormous amount of patience with you. This processing delay forces many pet owners into an extreme financial bottleneck. Veterinary clinics demand their money immediately after an expensive emergency procedure, regardless of how slowly your insurance works. This means you often have to advance thousands of euros out of your own pocket for months at a time. Therefore, never rely solely on the policy, as a liquid emergency fund in your savings account remains indispensable. This extreme delay creates a severe cash flow crisis for you, because the veterinary clinic demands their money immediately after a major emergency procedure, regardless of how slowly your insurance works, meaning you often have to advance thousands of euros out of your own pocket for months at a time, floating the massive bill yourself while waiting for reimbursement. Therefore, never rely solely on the policy, as a liquid emergency fund in your savings account remains indispensable. Do not let insurance fully replace your own financial cushion. So the big question remains completely unanswered in the end: is the whole thing even worth it for you at all? If you are afraid of predictable vaccination costs, full insurance is the wrong and most expensive path to take. It only becomes worthwhile for the existential risk of major operations that could drive you into severe debt. Your focus should always be on the contract structure, not on the sonorous name of a test winner. So what does optimal protection look like in practice? Choose pure surgery coverage and consciously agree on a higher deductible to drastically reduce the monthly costs. This way, you handle the minor ear infection confidently yourself, but have your back completely covered when the cruciate ligament tears. You pay for routine care in cash, while you outsource the financial disaster in a legally watertight way. This separation ensures you protect your pet safely without bleeding your budget dry. But before you blindly sign anything now, here is your final conclusive checklist. Require written confirmation of the exact year the cancellation waiver actually activates, and verify your emergency coverage limits, and then specifically ask about the risk of being thrown out directly after the first treatment for a chronic illness. By doing this, you ensure that the safety net you are buying is actually going to hold your weight. Protect your finances logically by rejecting flashy test winner labels and instead buying a hard, legally binding safety net for your dog.